I never thought I'd be sharing this story, but maybe someone out there needs to hear it. 3 years ago, I discovered my husband, Mark, was having an affair with a coworker. We'd been married for 7 years at that point, high school sweethearts who everyone thought would last forever. I guess they were right, just not in the way any of us expected. I found out about the affair in the most cliché way possible, a text message that wasn't meant for me. It was a Tuesday evening, and Mark had left his phone on the kitchen counter while he took a shower. The notification popped up, and I saw her name, Allison, followed by words that instantly made my stomach drop. Last night was amazing. Can't wait to see you again tomorrow. My hands were shaking as I unlocked his phone. I'd never done that before. We trusted each other completely. Or at least, I had trusted him. The messages confirmed everything. This wasn't a one-time mistake. This had been going on for months. When Mark came downstairs, I was sitting at the kitchen table, his phone in front of me, tears streaming down my face. I'll never forget the look on his face. Not shock or surprise, but resignation. He knew it was over. He didn't even try to deny it. "How long?" I asked. "For months," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. 4 months. While I was planning our anniversary trip, while I was helping his mother through her cancer treatments, while I was working overtime to save for the house we'd been dreaming about. For months of lies. Most stories like this end with divorce papers and starting over. But ours didn't. And that's why I'm sharing this, because what happened next wasn't what I expected. That night, after hours of painful conversation, after all the tears and accusations, I made a decision that surprised even me. I decided to stay. Not because I forgave him, I didn't, not then. Not because I was afraid to be alone or couldn't support myself financially. I stayed because, despite everything, I still loved him. Because 7 years of marriage meant something to me. Because I wanted to see if we could rebuild what we had. Mark ended the affair that night. He called her while I was in the room and told her it was over. He deleted her number, removed her from social media, and requested a transfer to a different department at work. He did everything right, everything I asked. But the real work was just beginning. The next few months were the hardest of my life. We started couples therapy, where we had to face uncomfortable truths about our relationship. It wasn't just about the affair. It was about the distance that had grown between us over the years, the communication that had broken down, the way we'd started taking each other for granted. During one particularly difficult session, our therapist asked Mark why he'd had the affair. His answer still haunts me. "I felt invisible," he said, "like I could disappear and no one would notice." Those words hit me like a physical blow. Had I really made my own husband feel invisible? Had I been so caught up in my own life, my own goals and ambitions, that I'd stopped seeing him? It wasn't an excuse for what he'd done. Nothing could excuse that betrayal. But it was the beginning of understanding. Rebuilding trust is like trying to repair a shattered mirror. You can put the pieces back together, but the cracks are always visible. For months, I checked his phone regularly. I asked him where he was going and with whom. I'd wake up in the middle of the night just to make sure he was still beside me. It was exhausting, for both of us. The turning point came about 6 months after D-Day, as we called it. I was going through his email, something I did regularly at that point, when I realized how tired I was. Not just physically tired, but soul tired. This constant vigilance, this perpetual suspicion, was draining the life out of me, out of us. That night, I told Mark I was going to stop checking his devices. Not because I suddenly trusted him completely again, but because I couldn't live like a detective anymore. If he was going to betray me again, no amount of surveillance would stop him. I had to either believe in our recovery or walk away. He cried when I told him that, actually broke down sobbing. It was the first time I'd seen him cry since the night I discovered the affair. He promised me he would never hurt me like that again, and for the first time, I believed him. But here's the thing about staying after an affair. Everything changes. Everything. The marriage we had before is gone. The people we were before are gone. In their place is something different. Not necessarily better or worse, just different. I'm more assertive now. I speak up when something bothers me instead of letting resentment build. I prioritize my own happiness instead of constantly sacrificing for others. I've learned that loving someone doesn't mean becoming their doormat. Mark is more attentive, more present. He's learned to express his feelings instead of bottling them up until they explode. He's learned that marriage requires constant work, constant communication. We're 3 years post-affair now, and in some ways, our marriage is stronger than it ever was. We don't take each other for granted anymore. We know exactly how fragile this thing between us is, how easily it can shatter, but the pain hasn't completely disappeared. Sometimes, I still wake up with that sick feeling in my stomach. Sometimes, I still have nightmares about them together. Sometimes, when Mark is late coming home from work, my mind still goes to dark places. Trust, once broken, never heals completely. It's like a bone that's been fractured. It may mend, but it's never quite the same. It's always a little more vulnerable at that break point. The affair is part of our history now, a chapter we can't erase. We've learned to talk about it without rage or tears, to acknowledge it without letting it define us. It's the scar that reminds us of the wound, but the wound itself has largely healed. I'm not saying everyone should stay after infidelity. For some, leaving is absolutely the right choice. There's no one-size-fits-all answer to betrayal. But for us, staying was the right decision, even though it was the harder path. If you're going through something similar, know that whatever you decide, to stay or to go, it's valid. Your healing matters more than anyone else's opinion of what you should do. For those who choose to stay, know that it gets easier. Not immediately, not completely, but gradually. The days where you don't think about the affair at all become more frequent. The moments of genuine joy and connection with your partner return. And something else happens too. You discover your own strength. You learn that you can face the worst pain imaginable and still stand. You learn that forgiveness isn't a single act but a daily choice. You learn that love is complicated and messy and sometimes brutal, but still worth fighting for. Today, Mark and I are planning a vow renewal ceremony for our 10th anniversary. Not to pretend the affair never happened, but to acknowledge that we've built something new from the ashes of what was destroyed. Something more honest, more resilient. I don't know what the future holds for us. I can't promise we'll be together forever, but I do know that I don't regret staying. I don't regret doing the hard work of rebuilding. I don't regret choosing love over pride, healing over vengeance. Sometimes the deepest wounds lead to the most profound healing. Sometimes the darkest moments precede the brightest dawn. Sometimes staying is braver than leaving. This isn't a fairy tale ending. It's complicated and imperfect, just like life. Just like love. But it's real, and it's ours, and that's enough.